And welcome once again to Ewtn's Bookmark. I'm Doug Keck, your host. Our guest authors are Chris and Jenn Kaczor. The book is The 7 Big Myths About Marriage, published by Ignatius Press. And I'll say, this is Jenn right here, and this is Chris. Welcome to Ewtn's Bookmark. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Now, Chris, you've been an author before. You've written a couple of books, right?
I have, yeah. I've written a book called The 7 Big Myths About the Catholic Church, also with Ignatius Press, and also other academic books like The Ethics of Abortion, Thomas Aquinas on the Cardinal Virtues. And the most popular thing I've written is called How to Stay Catholic in College. It's a kind of a pamphlet with Catholic answers.
Is it a pamphlet because there aren't that many good answers? Is that what's a pamphlet? Could it be a bigger book if there were better answers?
It could have been a bigger book, but the idea is that it's very small and people won't be intimidated, because if you hand them a 500-page tome, they get nervous. And this is only 19 pages, so college students can get through it.
Right, and you had mentioned the 7 big myths about the Catholic Church, distinguishing fact from fiction about Catholicism. Now this is the 7 big myths about marriage. Is there some magic in the number 7 for you, Chris?
There is magic. There is magic. I have 7 kids, and it's 7 sacraments. You know, there's lots of reasons for 7, but I think mainly it's to have a memorable way of organizing things. Because if you tell people this is the 13,000 facts you'll learn about marriage, people, I think, are repulsed by that. Where 7, they say, oh, well, 7, I can wrap my mind around that.
Right, it used to be 10, now we're to 7. The attention spans are getting shorter. Now, let me ask you, Jenn, now, you've got an educational background as well. I know your husband here is a professor, but let me ask you, is this the first book that you've actually ever written? Because I know you had a parent who was a writer, right?
Yes, yes, my father was wrote Dynasty back in the 80s, way back when. Yes, and to say that I wrote this book is extremely generous, because in fact Chris wrote like 99.9% of the book, and I contributed some humorous articles.
She contributed the best parts, the good parts.
Well, I can tell you, after sitting here, I heard her voice in this book several times.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I think people read the book and they skip everything I do and they just look for her good stories. So you know, I have many students who read the book who really just laugh and say, I read this story to my mom, and so I'm so glad that her stories are in there, because I really do think people like those.
Now I noticed, Jenn, in your case, and at least one of the stories was from an article you had written on Catholic Exchange or something, so you had
I have published, with National Review Online and Catholic Exchange, yes, and a number of publications like that. Yeah.
Okay, Chris, let me ask you, how long have you two guys been married then?
22 years.
22 years. And out of them, how many have been happy?
I can only think of one unhappy year. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I'd say most have been happy. I mean, there's obviously, I think every marriage, has ups and downs. I think it's a little bit like health. I mean, most people are fairly healthy and go through life. But I think if you live a long life, that you're going to probably have some difficulties at some point, and hopefully, you can get through those and stuff. And that's one of the things I mention to my students is that many times people think, oh, if you have a difficulty in your marriage, that means you're doomed either to divorce or the rest of your life's going to be miserable. But actually the research shows that most couples that are going through difficult times, if they stick with it, 5 years later report being either happy or very happy. So I think that's important to encourage people to say that just because there's some difficulties you're going through does not mean you're doomed for, again, a life of unhappiness or to get divorced.
Well, why do you think you two have this attitude towards something that we live in a disposable society where a lot of people are told if it doesn't feel good, don't do it, and if it's not working, get out now.
Yeah.
What is it in your understanding of marriage or how you were raised that gave you a different conclusion?
Yeah, well, I think we both understand marriage as a real covenant, where in marriage you're giving yourself to the other person and creating a family bond. So I'd say, just as with parents and children, sometimes they go through difficulties. I mean, many parents say, oh, when my son was a teenager, when my daughter was a teenager, we had big fights and we had trouble and this and that. But, normally after, they go through those difficult times, and then you come out and, you have great, rest of your life is great.
I came from a more troubled background, so a lot of divorce on both sides. So my parents divorced, and then they had relationships with other people that also ended. And this kind of exponentially was greater than most people experience. And so the idea of a covenantal marriage was particularly appealing to me. And when my mother started taking my brother and myself back to Mass, realizing sort of the mistakes that she had made and not wanting to perpetrate those on her kids, it was extremely appealing to me. And I could see the difference between people who lived in a certain way and followed a set of beliefs. And I certainly was not brainwashed. I certainly wasn't like slavishly like, oh, I'll drink your Kool-Aid no matter what because my Kool-Aid's been so bad. I just thought there's some truth here. Even at 12, I thought there's some truth here. There's some profundity here. And that appealed to me.
Well, I was going to ask you, because sometimes you see that, and sometimes with situations where you would think children coming out of these very tough relationships actually have a much more conservative, let's say, old-style view of how they want their life to go, and it kind of runs contra to what most people think. So, are there other people you grew up with who had a similar perspective, or have you seen that in going along, or have you seen that, Chris, in teaching?
Yeah, I think many of my students have gone through real difficulties with, the parents who raised them getting divorced and all kinds of real trouble. And so I think it is attractive to them to think of marriage as about unconditional love. And that's what a covenant marriage is. I mean, you promise in the vow, right? I'm going to love you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. And, when I took that vow, I meant I'm going to love you in good times and in bad, in sickness and health, till death do us part. And it's a very radical commitment.
Even if you didn't really understand it totally yourself when you were saying it,
that's exactly
the fact that you committed to that meant the tough times to realize, I said I would and I can and I should.
That's right, yeah. And no one, obviously, no one knows what the future holds. I mean, whether, life has surprises and ups and downs, and thank God we've never been really sick, but I hope I would be a person of my word if she got really sick, that I would not be like, oh, sorry, honey, you're sick now, so I'm going to... that
I think
would be
another thing that has to be acknowledged for some of the younger students, the young adults who come and take part in Chris's course, is their pain has to be acknowledged. Because until you really acknowledge that and say, you were hurt. This was devastating. You didn't want this at 12 or 13 or whenever it happened, and it was really devastating, and you're still hurt. You can't then move on. You can't get to the healing. Well, what can fix it? Because if there's nothing wrong, you can't fix it. And I think so often the people who are involved in the divorce are so anxious to bury the pain, so anxious to say, well, children are, so flexible, and so they're so resilient. They're so
better than all the arguing and things like that.
And so the kids kind of, I think, sometimes get to Chris like, well, yes, my parents were divorced, but there's nothing wrong with that, even though they are feeling the pain. So I think you have to almost start there. There's a brokenness and a pain, and it can be healed.
Right, and I guess from someone as old as I am who remembers the 60s where the idea was, well, it would be better for you to get divorced than have all this arguing. But yet all the studies showed later, and you talk about how many of the studies that you quote in your book, showed that the kids wished the parents had stayed together virtually in almost all the cases, regardless of how much yelling was going on, right?
And I think that also there's a kind of false choice that people are given with. Well, either argue like crazy and have terrible, or get divorced. Well, how about a third option that you really both try and work on it? And the fact is we're all changing. So just because something's not good at a certain moment does not guarantee at all that it's going to just go on like that forever. I mean, if both people work on it, they pray, they try their best. I think that,
secular.
Yeah, they seek. They have counseling. They have whatever they need. I think there's good reason to think that things can improve and move in the right direction and develop. Just as if people have good marriages and they rest in their laurels, like, well, everything's fine. I don't have to be nice to her. I just do whatever. Well, you can turn around 5, 6 years later and say, oh my gosh, we're in big trouble.
Or people, when they become parents, become good parents and lose the marriage aspect, the spousal relationship kind of.
Right.
And then you end up with the empty nest, and they look at each other and they realize
who are you?
They really don't have anything in common anymore. Now you talk about the 7 myths, love is simple, marriage is 50-50 contract, love alone makes a marriage, etc. And you talk about a lot about cohabitation. At least I think you think about today's. That's such a big thing, and certainly with college students, I would think. And you said with the 50-50, that whole idea of it's really in the covenant thing. It's that 100-100. If
that's
not,
right. Exactly.
It's actually probably more like 1,000. Probably is closer to it. But you do have that idea that it's not a contract, and you make that connection in here. That idea, it's not like, well, I sign a contract that says, if you do these things, I will love you, and if I do these things for you, you'll love me.
That's right.
And if you don't do it, then we don't love each other
anymore. Yeah. No, I think that's such an important idea. Marriage is a little bit like becoming a parent, I think, in the sense of, once I became a father, I'm in a relationship of being, a parent to my kids, no matter what. So my kids might be wonderful kids, valedictorian, the ideal, everything, whatever a parent would want, or they might be the other end of the spectrum. But I'm still their dad, and so my choice at that point is just to try to be a really good dad, or not be a good dad, but there's no getting out of being a dad. I mean, if you have kids, you're a dad, and that's a permanent, unconditional kind of relationship. And I think that a covenant marriage is like that. I mean, I'm her husband as long as she's alive. And my choice at this point is, well, I can try to be a good husband, be a bad husband, but I mean, I can pretend.
And all your kids are different.
Yeah,
exactly. No matter how much you've raised them the same and everything else, they're all different.
They're all different.
Yeah.
They all have their strengths and weaknesses. There's things about you love them more on this than another. But at the end of the day, you still love them.
That's exactly right. And I think that this idea of unconditional love, I think for almost everyone, is very attractive.
I think the kids really, because they're still young enough to be very attached to their mom and dad, which is great. And so, when they come to Chris and they're hearing this, they're like, oh yeah, my mom loves me. She sends me care packages.
Sometimes they can't wrap their mind around the idea.
Yeah, it's difficult to wrap their mind around a covenantal marriage. But when they hear that idea that my mom loves me no matter what, then that helps them a little bit.
Because they've almost all experienced that. I mean,
I wonder with your experience, you guys being younger, because for me, I was surprised when I went to high school that there were people who didn't like their parents, kids who weren't happy with them. I was kind of surprised. I think in many cases, maybe it's the reverse for some of these kids, where they come out realizing that, thinking that to say that I have a good relationship with my parents and things like that, you might be thought less of in some ways. There's a lot of cultural pressure to norm into what society tells people they're supposed to be. Because you talk about that kind of pluralistic ignorance, that all the things that are supposedly true that aren't true.
That's right. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Many students kind of think, oh, everyone's doing this, but in fact, that's not really true. And so they have, the technical term is pluralistic ignorance, that they kind of go through and they want to fit in with the crowd. And in fact, if they really knew the facts about things, they'd realize, well, even though it seems as if everyone's doing this or that, in fact, really, that's not true. So for instance, this is not in this book, but there's lots of research about prayer. And the vast majority of Americans pray every single week, and a huge number pray every single day. And so people might think, oh, no one prays, and God's old-fashioned or whatever. No, in fact, most people pray. I know people who call themselves atheists who pray. So the fact is, this is and it's encouraging, I think, for people to know about facts like this, so that they don't feel like, oh, I'm so weird, I want to pray. No, you're not weird. This is perfectly normal, and what you see on TV, that is not always reality.
And that's a big part of what we try to do with Ewtn, is to show people out there that you're not alone.
That's
and
exactly
that you can, in the privacy of your own home and in the, or for the radio in the car, you can participate in your faith. And the reality is there's tons of people out there who are faith-filled, who are afraid to step out because they're afraid of being ridiculed, and they've been convinced that everybody else doesn't believe this.
That's right. Yeah, and that's just not true.
Or actually ridiculed.
Exactly.
In some cases.
That they're going to be disparaged. Exactly, and there's kind of this group thing put on there.
An example of this is at Princeton University. You might think, well, Princeton is just filled with only secular people. Everyone's an atheist. That is not true at all. So if you go to Princeton University at daily mass, you can show up there at noon, you'll see 30 or so undergraduates from Princeton at daily mass. This is not, this is not something that is totally rejected by people that are smart and informed and influential. Not at all. We went to this reception at Princeton the other day, a pro-life reception. It was co-sponsored by something like 20 or 15, 20 different professors at Princeton, and then tons of students. And so again, people can get a
Robbie George.
Robbie George. So people can get a false impression that sort of, well, everyone thinks this or everyone does this, and well, I don't want to be weird and not fit in. And I think part of being an effective teacher is to help dispel that kind of ignorance. Say, well, look, you may think that, but that's not the reality.
Now, so with you teaching, you moved to another location because you were teaching at Princeton, right? So let me ask you: is your house now as smart as Bill Gates?
It is not. It's gotten even dumber because we rented it out to 5 frat boys.
Okay. But you said neither is your husband.
I know. That's not nice, is it?
No, but it's funny. And that's where I could hear your voice in here. Now, you also said, is this, Chris, you were the one who said one of the most important things that I learned was the nature of happiness? How did you learn the nature of happiness?
Well, partly from reading and doing study, because as a philosophy professor, one of the perennial questions is, how am I going to be happy? And so I learned a lot from a Jesuit priest named Father Robert Spitzer.
Yes, great friend of the network.
That's right, who I know you know. And he talks about these levels of happiness, and I was very convinced that he's totally right. That even if you were a celebrity and you had all the money in the world and all the bodily pleasure in the world, that really doesn't lead to happiness. As unfortunately, we know from sad things where celebrities end up even killing themselves, despite having what everyone thinks is going to give them happiness.
Right, exactly. And I would think that kind of despair is also very difficult for people who are that successful, because when you've gotten everything, especially at a young age, that they told you're supposed to be happy, and you realize they're ashes, then you realize, well, what do I have left? What's left in front of me? Now, you talked about, I think, Jen, about hero worship. It cannot make us happy, but can our spouse make us happy? I guess my question is, and you talked about Miss Lolly and somebody at Sedaris, right? But I'm just wondering, can anybody make you happy?
No, I don't think so. I think just, I mean, I think they can contribute to your happiness for sure, but they can't make you happy. I think just a prayer life, just a relationship with God, I think is the only thing that brings that inner peace, that true happiness.
Right.
But I think they can contribute.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think they can contribute, and also people could undermine it. I mean, if I punch you in the face right now, it's not going to make you happy. But yeah, I think that happiness is not something that can be just given. It's not something you unwrap and, oh, here's your happiness. It has to be something, you know, God's design, I think, is that we have to participate in it, and really by loving other people.
Right, and that's the Spitzer, the relationship with God, and that altruistic love of, and like our late great Holy Father said, that kind of self-donation. You know, we all know as we get older, let's face it, Christmas is fun because of the kids.
Right, that's right.
It's the giving the kids and seeing that and getting something and saying, this, they're going to love this. And
exactly.
That's where the joy comes from.
That's exactly right.
Even though you would think as a selfish little kid, that's not the way you would find happiness at all. Now, you say in this chapter, Love is Simple. Researchers on marriage report that the best basis for a long-lasting happy marriage is a solid friendship. Now, I remember as a kid, there was a movie called Shenandoah with James Stewart, where a young man was coming to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. He said, I know you love her. The question is, do you like her? And that always struck me in the back of my mind. But that really is an important part of a marriage, isn't it? It is. That you like each other. It is.
We've had conversations about that actually in the past, because I've said, I know you love me because you do all of these nice things for me, and you sacrifice all the time, and you pray for me, and I'm very, you know, comfortable with the notion that you love me, but sometimes I worry about whether or not you like me. And then, you know, he always says I do, and so sort of move on from there. But it is a question that is important, because I think we do need that. We do need that from each other. We need to feel that respect and that admiration and the affection. And just like I want to be your best friend. I want you to like me, you know. And I think our kids need that from us too. Not just unconditional love. They need us to like them.
Right, and to see that you want to spend time with each other. That spending time with each other is something you look forward to doing, not something you feel obligated to.
Right.
I remember years ago we were giving a lift to a relative of ours, and my wife was heading out the door, and the young lady sat in the front seat. And my wife said, no, Uncle Doug's coming with us. She was surprised, because in her situation, the dad would never go out with the family like on a Saturday to go shopping and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So she was surprised at that kind of a thing. So the other thing in marriage is 50-50 contract. You talk about the idea of, you know, how you can't really control the erotic love. You kind of talk about falling in love. But then you say, however, friendship, as mentioned earlier in the book, also involves not the choice of one person, but the choice of two people to have mutual goodwill. And it is that idea where friendship is really something you actually make a conscious decision to do.
Yeah,
you know
friendship always is mutual and involves goodwill. So if you really want to be friends with somebody else, say I want to be friends with you, you know, I could be really, really nice to you, but, you know, if I send you gift baskets and whatever, and you don't reciprocate, well, we're not really friends yet. So friendship always, I think Aristotle talked about this, friendship always is a two-way street, where both people have goodwill, they have shared activity, they have a shared emotional life together, and friendship can never be just, you know, just one way.
Right, and you do a lot of quoting of the Greeks in here too, just so people should know. You say all couples, happy couples, miserable couples, and divorced couples have irreconcilable differences. So even in couples who stay married and are quote unquote happy, have those differences, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're two different people, and so of course they maybe agree on many things, but they're not going to agree on everything. I mean, there might be political differences sometimes, or differences about opinion, how to raise the kids.
How to raise the kids.
It could be, and the thing is, I think that's sort of part of marriage, is to realize that we may not always see eye to eye on every single matter, but that's okay. I mean, that's very normal. Everybody is
But
like
if you have that communication, and there are times when you say, fine,
Right.
if you feel strongly about this,
Right.
I'm not sure I
Right.
totally agree, but I'm willing to do what you want to do.
And the fact is,
Because
Yes.
I respect
Yeah,
you
we've
and I
had-
love you. Right.
Sure.
Totally had things like that come up
Right.
where he's felt very strongly about something, and I said, you know what, I think you must be right because you feel so strongly about this, and I don't really. So I said, just take the lead on it, go for it. And he's had the same, he's like, yeah, you seem to know what you're doing, or I don't get it, but yeah, do what you need to do.
Right.
and I think
Yeah.
when there's humility, I mean, you recognize I'm not infallible.
Right. Yeah.
So I might not see something that she really
Right.
recognizes, and I need to be aware
Yeah.
of that and respect that.
And the great thing in those kind of relationships, too, is that one has the humility to then, even if one's got their way, to realize this isn't working out.
Yeah.
I think maybe you were right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's
Without
happened
going
too.
along and saying,
Right.
I'm not going to admit to him when I
Right.
was wrong.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
You know.
I think the important
Yeah.
thing is not who discovers the truth first, but to try to figure out, okay, well,
Right.
wow, in this instance, I think you're really right, and okay, I guess I made a mistake.
Right.
We all make mistakes. I mean, we're
Yeah.
human beings.
Now, I think this is the humiliations of the extras.
That-
That's you, right? What exactly is
That's
that?
me. Sometimes I do feel a bit like an extra. Like even here, this is sort of his book, even though he was kind enough to put my name on it. And he does making all of the money, and I do a lot of making of Apple Crisp. But
You just raised 7 kids.
I
That's
just
all.
yeah, and so I have to go to these things sometimes, and I feel sort of like. I'm not sure if I'm intelligent enough to be here, or and I proved to myself in that evening I wasn't intelligent enough to be there, nor were many of the other spouses.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned the other spouses over there. But the other thing you talk about in here, Chris, is forgiveness. As both of the aforementioned books you talk about earlier here, Fighting for Your Marriage and 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work, a key aspect of covenant marriage is forgiveness. And I was thinking that, I know from Marriage Encounter, having been involved with that, that was one of the key things I got the idea of moving away from, I'm sorry you feel that way,
Yeah.
to forgive
Which
me.
isn't really an apology.
Right, which is not apology.
right.
We hear it a lot in public these times. I'm
Right.
sorry you took it wrong.
Yes.
Well, I don't want to say that, but to where I'm, forgive me for hurting you, for saying that hurt
Yeah.
you. That was not my intention,
Right.
but can you forgive me?
Yeah.
And that's at such a deeper level, right?
Yeah, it's so important, I think, because again, we're all human, and so we have bad days, we make errors in judgment. Sometimes we're just in a really bad mood and feisty, and so look, if you're married for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, of course, at some point, you're going to say, do something that offends the other person, and so I think part of a covenant marriage, a Christian marriage, is to again say, wow, I really messed up there. That was not, I can't believe I did that. I'm really sorry. And really trying, I think not just saying sorry, but really trying to
Right.
do your best to remedy the situation, do better in the future, avoid that sort of thing.
And to better understand why that
Yeah.
person feels that way
Right.
about that. Even if you might
Right.
say, I don't see that, that's not
Right.
important. Like you were saying, Jen, earlier, it's not important to me, but it's important to you, so I'm going to
Yes.
respect that.
Right.
Now, I thought this was cute. Like any word, marriage must be defined, because if marriage means anything and everything, then marriage means nothing. And I'm thinking about what's going on out there these days. You quote, Abraham Lincoln is purported to have said, how many legs does a dog have if you call the tail a leg? 4, calling a tail a leg doesn't make it a leg. Similarly, people can call whatever they want marriage, but calling such arranged marriages do not make them marriages. Why is there so much confusion in your mind then with what a marriage is or isn't today?
Yeah, I'd say part of that has to do with the erosion of marriage over the last 40 years or so. I mean, when people get married and divorced and remarried, divorced, remarried, and some people do this 6, 7, 8, 9 times, I think people start to think of marriage just as sort of like dating or something. Like you're in a serious relationship, and you can imagine people dating 6, 7, 8 different people. So I think that culture of divorce has led over time to people thinking about marriage just as a kind of satisfying emotional relationship. So if you're not feeling emotionally good, well, you should get divorced. Or if you do feel these sort of romantic emotions with someone, well, that must be a justification for a marriage. So yeah, I think it's important to think about, well, what is marriage really? Is it just a covenant, or I mean, is it just a contract, or is it a covenant?
Right, and you also, in the fourth big myth, you talk about cohabitation being just like marriage. In reality, marriage is unlike cohabitation. And some of the things you talk about here is like, I think it was 4 maybe different things that were kind of like myths related to that. But one of the ones that why cohabitation is bad for marriage, and one of the ones, I think maybe it was the last one, talked about the idea of Yeah, here it is. A fourth account of why couples who cohabitate tend to have a higher divorce rate is that cohabitants tend to slide into marriage rather than decide to marry.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting. You know, people are kind of, well, we're together. I guess we might as well get married.
Yeah.
Right, right.
We had a neighbor who had, I think she'd been dating her husband fiance for like 9 years. And then they got married. And then within another 4 or something, they were divorced. And she was shocked. And I thought, why are you shocked? It took him 9 years to want to marry you. Where's the shock? But she couldn't see it. And I think, yeah, I mean, if somebody doesn't really, really, really want to marry you, maybe take your wares somewhere else.
Right, maybe it's a good idea. You shouldn't push it, right.
Yeah. And what happens sometimes is when people move in together, they start buying things together, they get the couch and the dog and whatever, and then the cost of getting out of it gets higher and higher. So eventually when they're, late 30s or mid 30s, well, we might as well just get married. We already got the couch and the dog.
I'm already here, and it's cheaper
to
live.
Exactly.
Everybody expects it.
And so they end up marrying someone that is a lower quality person in a lower quality relationship than they otherwise would have if they had just decided initially not to live together.
Because you talk about even, because we're out of time, the low view and the high view of marriage, but people have to read the book, unfortunately. Let me just ask you before you go, you have another book in the works?
I do, yeah. I'm working on a book on, it's called The Gospel of Happiness, and it's about the relationship of psychology and Christian spiritual practice and kind of how to be happier and such.
That's terrific. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure meeting you. Take care.
Thank you.
Speaking here with Chris Kaczor and his wife Jennifer about the book, The 7 Big Myths About Marriage, and it's published by Ignatius Press, available through the Ewtn Religious Catalog. Definitely worth the read. Join us next time right here on EWTN's Bookmark.